Well, I'd like to say good morning to everybody who listens online, and thank you for going online to listen to sermons and being a part of our worship experience. Last Sunday, I started this series on the fruit of the Spirit, and I teed up why Paul wrote this letter to the Galatians. He had started the very first churches there, his first missionary journey. He had left and was probably in Ephesus, writing this letter back because some folks came along behind him to undo what he had done. And these people were Jewish Christians. They were Christians, but they were adhering to a principle that you must first become Jewish in order to receive the Messiah. You must come under the covenant of Abraham. You must abide by Jewish rituals and laws. Then you can become a Christian. And Paul wrote to the Galatians saying, that's just not true. If you come to Christ, you belong to Abraham. That's his argument. And in that letter, he writes about these 9 fruit of the Spirit. Now, that's big S. So what he's talking about is the Spirit of God. These are fruit born within you when you belong to Christ. You don't manufacture these fruit. You don't own these fruit. You can't be good and make these fruit come up in your life. Sooner or later, you'll run out of your goodness. But this is God's Spirit in you producing these fruit. Now, this is a radical thought for the Jews of that day, that the God of the universe would dwell within a human being is just bizarre, as sinful as we are. So Paul is breaking in a tremendous amount of new material as he puts his stakes in the ground in Galatians. And he writes there, in our only passage for the summer series is chapter 5, 22 through 23, and maybe by the last sermon, I'm going to ask you to say this with me from memory, because I'm going to drill it into you until you get it. By contrast, he says, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against such things. The word of the Lord. Now, when I was preparing a sermon on joy, I went through my library to see if I had any books on joy, and I didn't. I didn't have one book in my library on joy, and it's the second fruit of the Spirit. When Paul was sitting down in Ephesus thinking, okay, what's God like? That's the fruit, so it's love. Well, okay, let's start there. The second thing that came to Paul's mind about God was joy. And I didn't have one book in my library on the subject of joy. Oh, I had books on worship and preaching and prayer and pastoral counseling. I had books on death, but I didn't have any on joy. I had books on world religions, and I had books on Christian ethics, theology, church history, Christian education, stewardship, leadership, mission work. Not one single book. What does that say? And so then I thought, well, surely I've preached on this at some point. And I had all my sermons back to 1979. I have them all. Some of them I need to throw away, but I had some of them back to 1979, and they were all listed, and I went back and I went through the entire list, and guess what? Nope. Not one single sermon on joy. And it's the second fruit of the Spirit. What is wrong with me? And I started feeling depressed about joy. So then I did what I should have done in the beginning. I went to the Bible. And there was 171 references to joy in our Bible. 171. Even Job, at one point the saddest man on earth, there was a reference to joy. It said, God will yet fill your mouth with laughter and your lips with shouts of. It's right in there. And there's a wonderful one read this morning in Psalm 30 Weeping may linger for the night, but comes in the morning. And I love this one. I bet you read this, but you don't remember it. This is one of my favorites. The parent of a fool has no joy. Somebody was having a bad day when they wrote that one. And Jeremiah, during the exile of Israel, they'd gone through their whole history, the wilderness, the battles of conquest, all of that. King David, so much history, and they lost the promised land. They went in exile. And they were in Babylon, and one of the prophets in exile was Jeremiah. And Jeremiah was continuing to prophesy about the Lord and about Israel even when they were in exile. And during that period of time, Jeremiah wrote, "My joy is gone." You ever been there? My joy is gone. Grief is upon me, and my heart is sick. Oh, that's a powerful sentence. But when the angels came that night to the shepherds on Jesus' birth, now you remember this, they brought, of all the words they could have said, here's what they said: "Do not be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news of great..." They could have said anything. They could have said, "I'm bringing you great in-depth theological understanding of the universe." Blah. "I'm bringing you Presbyterianism." You go, okay, but no thanks. No, when the angels came, this is a big deal when angels come. I know you've had some come to you, right? Yeah. When they flock in, they choose what they say very carefully. And for them to use the word joy, how big a deal is that? I'm bringing you joy. This is incredible stuff. When the wise man followed the star, Matthew says when they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with... Yeah, and then it's what Jesus says about it that you ought to pay attention to, because after his resurrection, now think about this, after the resurrection, you've got Jesus for a short amount of time, so everything he says is magnified in importance. If you want to get some potent Jesus, go and read everything he said post-resurrection, because all of that stuff is really, 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 really important, okay? So when post-resurrection, Jesus says to his disciples in John's gospel, "I've said these things to you so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete." Wow! Of all the things Jesus could have said, he picked the word joy, second fruit of the Spirit. I don't have a book on it, never preached a sermon on it. They didn't even mention joy in seminary to me. Did they to you? No, it never came up once at Duke, except during basketball season. And James writes in his letter, "My brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of any kind," imagine that, trials of any kind, "consider it nothing but joy." Why? Because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its full effect so that you may be mature and complete and lacking in nothing. Oh, the Bible's full of joy. It is. It wants you to have it. It wants human life to know it. It wants to be a fruit born within you. And I don't know about you, but when Paul thinks about the second thing in this list is joy, I very rarely think of God as being joyous. God's serious. And there's so much in the world going on today to break God's heart. How could God possibly be joyous when there's so much in the world today that's broken? And yet C.S. Lewis sheds some light on this. He has a book entitled Surprised by Joy, which now is in my library. And in that book, C.S. Lewis writes, "Joy is the consequence of being open to that which is beyond one's self. Joy is the consequence of being open to that which is beyond one's self. So in that sense, joy is not leisure. It's not self-entertainment. It's not even about making me happy. Joy is a river like the James that runs deep in the human soul that connects you to the very essence and meaning of life, God. And nothing can disconnect you from that, says James, regardless of the trial, regardless of the tribulation. So what is it the Bible's telling you? Joy is not circumstantial. It's rooted in a relationship with God. It runs deep in the human soul. It's not thwarted by failure. It's not determined by outward appearances. So many of us want to beat aging, and how much money is spent in the world today trying to beat aging, and yet aging is God's idea. I mean, you don't have to like the idea, but it's God's idea that we get older, that things start going south. And in our age, we enjoy a design and a plan that is in the mind of God. This is the way it should be. So our joy is not based on looking youthful or looking like we did when we were 25. Our joy runs deeper than our physical appearance. Sometimes I look in the mirror in the bathroom and I think, how did my dad get in here? You ever done that? Who is that old man in there? Oh, that be me. And yet my joy is not connected to things that are going on in me as I age, or to my physical appearance, or to my health, or to my education, and certainly not to my money, nor to my success. That goes without saying. The kind of joy that the Bible's talking about is a river that runs like the James, deep in the human soul, and connects you to the very essence and being of who you are and who God created you to be. That is your joy. Now, even though that river is there, it's always there, by the way. It's the joy of God that's planted in you. It's not your joy, it's God's joy. It's the fruit of God's Spirit in you. Even though it's always there, it's possible for it to be clouded over. And that happens when we lose someone we love. Our joy's gone, as Jeremiah said. My joy's gone and my heart is sick. And yet the psalmist would write, weeping may linger with the night, but joy comes with the morning. It's like a dark cloud that covers the sun, and yet if you break through that cloud, flying up to 30,000 feet, the sun is still shining, but the cloud won't let you see it. But it doesn't mean it's not there. A crisis can come. It can take your joy. Like last night or early this morning when 20 people were slaughtered in mass murder in Orlando, Florida. Just another episode yet again in the news about this senseless evil in our midst. It can steal your joy, and yet the sun is shining on the backside of that thunderstorm. Even for those 20 families, hard to say today. That's a hard thing to say, but it doesn't make it less true. Joy comes back in the morning. 9/11, a bad diagnosis, the recession of 2008, they all came to rob us of our joy. And then just life going in the wrong direction will steal your joy. You're out of balance. You're out of whack. You're worshiping the wrong gods. You're chasing the wrong stuff. You've built your house on the wrong foundation. You're wasting your life, and you know it, but you can't, for some reason, seem to stop. You know, they say when you're lost, you shouldn't drive faster. But why is it we all do it? When you're lost, you want to slow down. And yet, when we're lost, we drive faster as if I just push through this, I won't be so lost. And all you are is lost more quicker. And that's where the Bible talks about repentance. The word literally means turn around. Stop going in that direction. Go in another way. That can steal your joy when your life's out of whack and you've built it all on the wrong stuff. But also the pressures of life that come with that. 3 kids, aging parents, and a full-time job, that'll take your joy right out of you. And those are all good things. There's not one evil thing in the batch, but you fill your calendar to the brim. It's packed. You can't even get a toothpick in it. And chronic busyness steals your joy away from you because you're going from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. All good things. But they're stripping the joy away from you. The river's still in there somewhere, but it's clouded up by chronic busyness. Oh, there are a host of things that come to cloud out the sun of our joy. Disharmony in a relationship, divorce, anxiety, finances, health issues, addictions you've been battling and losing and battling and losing and battling. That's what an addiction does until you finally win. A child in trouble, that'll do it. It's a dark, dark, dark thunderstorm that rolls in on your life. And the sun of your joy, the joy of God, is still running like the James in the soul, and yet you can't get to it. I have lost my joy, and my heart is sick, said Jeremiah. For every joy robber, though, there's a joy giver that helps the morning come back. Isn't that true? Over a period of time, there are these joy givers that just help the sun start to shine again. I have 4 little people in my life who call me Doc. They're my grandchildren. The reason they call me Doc is when my son asked me, "What would you like your grandson to call you?" I said, the Reverend Dr. Stephen Philip Eason Sr. will do. Or Sir. And it turned into Doc, which I happen to love. Those 4 little kids can bring joy back into my life. The sun can crack through the clouds within a matter of minutes. Now, if they stay too long, the clouds come back. I just want to say that. So I can do about 15 minutes. But isn't it true that God provides that joy, that river that's there starts to, I'm mixing my metaphors, but the sun, the river are all breaking through that which has come to cloud and take away your joy. It's the grandchildren. So most of the time, folks, look, it's not complicated. It comes back in simple ways. A meal with some friends on the deck, and the sun is going down, and the candles are lit on the table, and you're enjoying people that have meant a great deal to you for a long, long time. That's joy. It creeps back in your life like joy comes with the morning, the breaking of light. It comes through just having a good book, one of those books you just can't put down, and you find that space and you're just entrenched in it, and somehow your joy begins to return just because you have that book and the knowledge in that book and the story that you're wrapped up in. Have you ever been there? It comes back. Maybe for you who are younger, and you've got plenty of issues to deal with when you're younger. But you got that date with that girl that you wanted to take to the prom, and she said yes, you can't believe it. And the James River breaks open in your life. Or if you're a girl, that boy you hoped would ask you, he did. And the sun starts coming through the clouds of your life. It's the joy that comes in the morning that belongs to God. It comes in a wedding. In April, I get to walk my baby girl down the aisle to be married this coming April, the 3rd one. And I used to think they'd all get off my payroll, but that doesn't happen. So I can't be joyous about that, but I'm joyous I'm joyous, Suzanne. You have a wedding coming up this weekend. I'm joyous that she has joy, that she's found the joy of her life, that she is moving into a new phase of her life. And how can you not let the sun of God's joy break open on you on days like that, or on the day of a birth of a child? When all is well and all is good, the sun begins to shine again through those clouds that have been covering your life and my life. These are all gifts of joy from a God of grace. And this joy is contagious. The other night, Catherine's in Brevard with the two grandchildren for this week, and her mother and sister went with her, and they're coming back today, and that's good because I've been boiling the carpet and eating it for dinner. But I lost my train of thought. So I ordered out, and I had to go pick it up. And it was late, 7:30-ish after work, and I went to this place, and you pull your car up, and they'll bring your food out to you. And this delightful young girl who obviously had some learning disabilities of some sort, I watched her as she was waiting on the cars, and her joy was contagious. And I thought, how can you be so happy doing this? I mean, and she went back and forth, and she finally got to my car, and I was excited to see her. It was like, I'm so glad you came to my car. Well, how are you tonight? I'm fine. Good. What, now your name is Steve. Steve, I'm going to be right back with your food. You're going to love this food. This is the best food. Her joy spilled over on me. And when I gave her my card and I tipped her, I said, I want you to go in and tell your boss something. And she went, oh, what? I said, you tell your boss you have the best customer service of anybody I know of, and that you deserve a raise. And I said, bill that to First Presbyterian Church of Richmond, Virginia. And she lit up, she bloomed like somebody recognized my gifts and my talents today. Her joy was contagious to me. It's a powerful fruit of the Spirit. It gives us a glimpse of God, a taste of heaven. It's what Christians, it's how we're attractive to the world, frankly. Who would ever want to come to a church and join a joyless band of pious people who spend all their time snipping at each other and judging other people? I don't even think Jesus belongs to that group. Because this joy is God's. It's not ours, and it is born in us as a fruit of God's Spirit. Look, of all the things Jesus could have said after his resurrection, he deliberately chose to say this. Pay attention. I have said these things to you so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. May this joy, the fruit of God's very presence in our lives, grow within us and be contagious to the world. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, they joyously said, Amen. Is that the best you can do? And they joyously said, Amen. Thanks be to God.